I grew up in Arlington, Virginia. Fairlington was the community, purpose-built little town. Single mom, one older brother, 5 years. Perfect neighborhood to grow up in, safe. Cool little green belts behind everyone's houses. Old townhomes, red brick, black shutters. And everyone's backyards connected to this green belt, grass that interlinked the neighborhood. So as a kid, I had a long leash. 2 main streets that I was not allowed to cross. We're talking, from up to about 10 years old. And within that radius, there was a lot of other kids and a big area that I could explore and ride my bike and socialize. Moved to California when I was 11. Totally different. Mm-hmm. Bay Area, suburb. Big contrast in wealth. Rich kids, spoiled kids. No diversity. All white. So that kind of sucked. Mom did an exceptional job, I'd have to say, raising us on her own. Eccentric, kind of the flower child in her family. She wasn't raised under the general's standard. Her older siblings were very regimented. So she got that freedom at an early age. She became, and then in the 60s, she became a bit more free than her siblings. She met my dad in England on a monastery. She was doing a monastery program. Met my dad in London. And they put out my brother and I. I never saw him until I was 20 years later. Yeah. Went to high school in Walnut Creek. My senior year, I did independent study. Actually, partway through my junior year. I went from going to school every day to once a week. I'd show up for a couple hours, turn in assignments, that week's worth of assignments, and take exams showing that I understood the material and was able to finish high school early. Not go as much. I started working early. There's pros and cons to that. They went to San Luis Obispo to Cuesta College, Central California. Couldn't maintain with having to pay rent and a car payment and time for school and enough time to work to make enough money to live there. So eventually I couldn't, I stopped going to school. Mm-hmm. I had to work more. And quickly I realized what you could do with your money and decided to go to Europe later that year.
How old were you then?
20.
And that's where I got my education.
I feel, really.
Throwing myself out there, not knowing anybody.
And traveling on my own for years to come.
What was the real push to change your lifestyle so dramatically?
There's nothing about me that changed. It was identifying what it is I wanted to do and going with that flow. Fighting social normalities that some people feel like we have to abide by. I don't know, if you're curious about something, absorbing your thoughts, passionate about something, or really intrigued or want to do something, there's something you want to do at a young age, I think you have to go through with it. You have to check it out, try it. You never know what course that'll take you out on.
You wanted to travel, or you wanted?
Yeah, I was curious. I don't know when or that shifted. It just became something. I knew it was a goal of mine. Writing that down, 18, 19 years old, thinking, it'd be cool to go to Europe, and writing that down. If you're interested in something that much, you make it a focal point, you go through with it. I think a catalyst was, I never felt too attached to anything, for starters. Mm-hmm. We moved when I was an adolescent. I wasn't home a lot, teenage years. I was always out with friends, trying to stay away from home. I don't know, I had an opportunity to do it. I was living with my friend's parents at the time, working 2 jobs, and rather than me paying rent, which I offered to do, I mentioned the idea of going on a trip away for a few months, and they were all about it. They thought that would be a really good thing for me. So they said, stay here, work the summer. At the end of the summer, go to Europe, you'll have enough money to go by then. So they allowed me to save money to do this. Mm-hmm. That really helped. But I definitely think there's people that have the means to do it, but they have a hard time executing it. I've had friends, plan work abroad, semesters abroad, and show up. One friend in particular, get to the airport to turn around before he was nervous the whole time going into this project, and
he got all the way to the airport before he got cold feet and walked away, never went. And you never know, like, by going through an idea like that, I didn't expect it to become 10 years of living in different countries.
What countries were you in?
Mostly all European countries, New Zealand and Canada, and then ski trips to Japan and Alaska. Mostly all ski resort destinations. With my mom passing, that was really the end of any tether. My older brother was secure, stable, working, had his own place, looking after his daughter. I was on my own. I'd just come back from Europe, 3-month trip to Europe, my first one. A month later, my mom passed. And I remember distinctly one of my closest friends, the family that I was living with, their son, who's my age, said, when I mentioned the idea of carrying on, moving abroad, he said, yeah, of course, why would you not? You have nothing here holding you here anymore. We're all going to stay here. We're home buddies, rooted, have a harder time doing that sort of thing. I was a bit more of a free spirit in that regard. So they said, why not, man? Fucking 21 years old, and you got nothing here really holding you. We're fine. We'll be here when you get back. And that's all I need. That was all the convincing I needed.
What was your motivation to keep bouncing around different ski resorts? Just the wanderlust, like looking for adventure, or was there something else?
I think it's a combination of a few things. You meet amazing people in these places. It's a unique environment because this group of people for the season, with seasonal workers and seasonal towns, will never ever be together ever again. You might be lucky to make a solid connection with a couple and see them down the road in each other's hometowns or somewhere else. Right. But that collective, people you see around town that you become familiar with, acquaintances, friends, just people you make a small connection with that last in that moment through a season. There's something special about that. And I found that in every single place that I lived in these different seasonal towns. That kept the drive going. But obviously the biggest factor was the snowboarding. It was like, where's the biggest resort? Where's the best resort? Who gets the most snow? That was my routine, was reading stats of different ski resorts. Snow and vertical height, nightlife, as far as getting places to work. It's a small little podunk town, there's not much work. The drive was to snowboard in different places around the world and to meet new people that were going to be interesting and exciting.
What is it that you get out of snowboarding?
It's a way for some people, it's a sense of freedom and expression. You're captured in the moment. You're connecting with nature. It's exhilarating. You can challenge yourself. You're reliant on nature. You're vibrating at a different level, not so stagnant.
What are the major challenges that you've faced through all of that time, this very different lifestyle?
I think the hardest thing is making friends and just not seeing them again. There's a lot of folks that you make solid connections with, and you appreciate it for what it's worth, for the time that you've had it, but your community gets spread out, and time and space can separate those connections, those relationships. So I feel like I've made a lot of friends, but everyone's so scattered and too much time can pass. Because community's huge. I mean, if you're not nomadic and you're staying in one place, then I would think that building a community and having that is a key foundation to your life. People that live the nomadic lifestyle, I think, find their tribe in others that share that similar drive, life. And you connect for what it's worth in that time that you have together. That's where people might find their connection.
What are your thoughts about minimalism as a lifestyle?
I think it's great. I think we've entered way too many things into our lives and overcomplicated it, dependent on things now that didn't exist not too long ago. And obviously that's the other side of moving around so much, is you don't carry too many things, right? And there is psychology involved with getting attached to materials and needing extravagant things. But I mean, let's face it, minimalizing our lifestyles is a good idea. The way things are going.
So you pretty much became a minimalist of sorts when you were 20, would you say?
I mean, I don't know. What is minimalism? I mean,
did you have a lot of stuff when you were in Europe?
No, I mean, I could carry everything.
Right.
Yeah, I could walk with everything.
Right.
But there was a bed where I showed up, and
But tell me about that experience of living that lightly for however long you
Easy.
did. I've never gotten to that level.
it's easy. I mean, things get easier when you have less. I'm thinking about getting rid of my phone after yesterday's fucking spell. It's like, why do I have this thing that is causing so much stress at times? The rest of the time, it's fucking brilliant. That detachment, that's a whole nother conversation. And we're the last generation of this, that knows the world before. Do we get sucked in, or we have to find balance? And that might tie into this minimalism, like people back, the generation before and our grandparents' generation, they reused all sorts of things, they weren't throwing away shit. They kept things simple, minimalists. Should be labeled as such a term. It should just be normal. Make do with a little less. We don't need so many things.
So you came back from Europe.
After my first season in Switzerland, in Zermatt, I came here to South Lake, lived on the ridge here. I could ski right out the front door. Fucking awesome spot. Cheap. Worked in the kitchen, cooking for a season, then went to New Zealand after that. I came back. I remember being on the plane back, asking myself, why am I leaving? I knew I wanted to go back before I even left. It was ridiculous, really, to leave in the first place. Some people asked me that, knowing that I wanted to come back. So yeah, I was in the Bay Area for a few months, and then went back to New Zealand. I just spent a lot of money going back and forth that year. That was not necessary. Went back, did another winter and a summer in New Zealand, in Queenstown. Met an English girl by Christmas that year. I was in England with her. We kind of met in a travel, spent a few months, a seasonal relationship that became really special. And I moved to England to be with her. We were together 6 years. On a whim. I moved to England only knowing her for a few months. And it became something really, really cool. For a while, we moved to a lot of places. We lived in Canada and Austria and Portugal together. Two people very, I think, in some aspects, driven towards their own passions and had the freedom to go with it and see where it would take you. We gave each other opportunities for either myself or her to do what it is that they wanted to do that year, that season. But both of us weren't totally stoked doing what we wanted to do at the same time. It was one or the other. And eventually we realized that we were starting to be pulled in different directions. We had changed over 6 years, and we wanted more. We were just turned 30, and as a milestone, we wanted to see what else we could do if we followed that. And there were two very different things when we outlined what we saw our futures looking like. The good thing that came out of that is that she followed her passion in teaching horse riding and training horses. And that's what can happen when you set someone free in that regard. You can see relationships where people, one of the persons might be so driven to do something else and tied down. I don't think she would have done that had we stayed together.
Right.
I'm really happy of that result, Someone you love and you fuck up the relationship. You hope she comes out a lot better on the other end. She did right away. And she fell in love and she met a guy and they got married.
That's just a beautiful way to look at it,
Yeah. That was 6 years. We lived in a lot of different places during that time. I had planned to move to Canada, and I had my visa, which I had a year to enter. So instead of going right away, I stayed in San Francisco and reconnected with my friends and my brother there, because I was going through absolute hell, losing the closest person in my life for the last half a decade. And that was good to just reground myself. And then I moved to Canada. I went to Nelson, BC, which is a fine, fine small town in the Kootenay Mountains in southern British Columbia, near the Washington border. Very cool community. That's where I learned that, what that heart could feel like. how people can connect in a small town and make an effort to do that. I moved there because it's the highest concentration of cat skiing operations in Canada. So I wanted to work my way into that field. My visa had expired. I wasn't able to get any work in that area and had to leave. I overstayed a month and I shouldn't have. And they were very lenient on me when they discovered this in my border crossing. So I came back to San Francisco with the intent to move back to Canada within a year, and I got stuck for 3 years in San Francisco. And I eventually accepted that and stayed. After the first year was like, no, this is working out really well, I should stay. So I stayed. And then I came up to Tahoe. Actually, then I had my daughter. So in the last year, since she's been alive, we've moved around a lot.
That's obviously a big change in your life, having a daughter. How are you?
It's huge. It's amazing. I can't wait to be living near her. For the last few months, we've lived a few hours away from one another, so it's been a lot of driving, but it hasn't been enough time. It's a great change of pace, actually. It's a very welcomed change of lifestyle. Obviously, there's nothing else that matters than your child when it happens. Your day with this new being is just so enriched than what you're used to before that. The smallest things that she's discovering for the first time, it's great to just watch them, just see that.
Kind of renews your appreciation for life and
for all the little things, for
those.
time. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That time doesn't really fucking matter, you know what I mean? And there's simple necessities that we really need. I mean, she only needs a few basics right now. Keep me comfortable and fed and clean, rested or stimulated. And if you find that balance, it's a very blissful way of living. It's nice. Actually, we all obviously used to live that way, and now when we talk about minimalism and all these things we've added to our lives, you don't see that with a baby. They just run on basic functions.
Right. Purity.
Yeah, that's kind of that's a nice reminder. That's a nice thing to witness, view into.
How does it change your goals now? I mean, you're going to move closer to her.
Yeah, it definitely changes a few things. Fortunately, they're in an area that's beautiful. So I'm excited to be exploring Central Coast. It's a fucking awesome area. So I'll be doing a lot of backpacking and camping and getting her introduced to the outdoors and, that sort of thing. Snowboarding is taking second to this now. And I'm okay with that. I'm going to reverse what I'm doing this season, Every other weekend, I come up here and I go riding and I get my snowboard fix. Instead of every other weekend, I go and see my daughter. I thought I could do it this way, but it's unbalanced. We'll see. There's always... I've sat on my hands for many years with goals that I've had. I haven't done it up to this point already. Trying to work in that field. That was a goal of mine for a long time. That was why I did a lot of these things. Now I have my daughter. Focus on her. Use this for what it might potentially meant to be. It's just a recreational, freeing thing. Don't combine your passion with your job. I've heard one person say a long time ago.
What advice would you give to someone listening to this in your position when you were 20? Taking that leap of faith, but you said you needed a lot of convincing.
Do it. If something's burning inside of you, do it. Go through with it. Check it out. Try it. You never know what the outcome's going to be unless you take that leap of faith.